gentlemen, welcome to Destiny Education Hanging with the Fellas podcast with your host, Toina.
Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Hanging with the Fellas. I'm Toina with Destiny Education, and I'm so excited to be here with you. Tuesdays at 2 is my favorite time of the week. So, I want you to know today we are sitting down with Bishop Rufus Keith Turner. And this is one of the absolute most dynamic men I have ever had the pleasure of meeting in my life. I have watched this man endure some things that most of us would have crumbled with. And I wanted to bring him on because too many of you are struggling with things and not knowing how to overcome them, not knowing that there is a way out, and not understanding necessarily how to utilize the biblical principles to continue moving yourself into the land of success. And one of the things that I love about Bishop Rufus or Bishop Turner is that I want him to bring to you some solutions for the struggles that you're having, and through his story, because the word is very clear, they overcame him by the blood of the lamb, the word of their testimony, and they did not love life unto death. And this is the man who exemplifies that. So without further ado, it is my greatest pleasure and my sincerest honor to introduce you to Bishop Rufus Keith Turner of Victory and Praise Church of Stockton.
Thank you for inviting me to be here. It's just a blessing to be able to join this discussion with you.
My pleasure. So, bring us up to speed, Bishop. Help us to understand what it really takes to stand. How have you gone through many of the life experiences you've had? Tell us where it all began for you, and define for our gentlemen what it means to be a bishop. What does
Oh,
that title mean?
first of all, I guess I'll do the latter one. I will
Okay.
explain to how I ended up becoming a bishop. A bishop is someone that oversees a region or a group of churches. I started the church 26 years ago, and out of the church in Stockton, about 4 or 5 churches, they were birthed. And then other churches started coming under my, I guess you can say, tutelage to teach them how to deal as a pastor, how to grow a church, how to maneuver through all of the ups and downs of ministry. And so after a while, the pastors got together and pretty much put forth they wanted me to become a bishop, in which it took 5 other existing bishops to give me the green light, and we had a ceremony that elevated me to the office of bishop. And so I was already doing the work of a bishop before I became a bishop. That's the type of person I am. I'm not into the titles, I'm into the work for the kingdom of God. So
And that, gentleman, is a sincere fact. Bishop, I'm sorry, you'll have to forgive me, gentlemen. I've always called him Bishop. So that's like his first name for me. I don't call him Pastor Turner. No, it's always Bishop. So Bishop Turner has gone out of his way actually to roll up his sleeves and always be busy. He's never been I'm going to do this for the accolades and the look. He's always been about, how do I make a difference in the world?
that is correct. That is correct. And I've discovered that as a part of ministry and a part of growing as an individual, you have to go through peaks and valleys. Everyone wants to stay on the top of the mountain, but that's impossible. The air is thin up there. So you have to sometimes come down and go through the valley in order to make your way up the next mountaintop to reach the peak. The Word of God says, "As I walk through the valley," so you got to keep moving through the valley. You can't stop and set up house. You got to keep stepping and keep moving, no matter what. As long as you're breathing, you got to keep moving because God has something for you to do. He always has something for you to do.
He does. Now, How did you get started in ministry? What was it that made you decide this was the direction you want to go?
It was a call from God. It was God stopping me in my tracks. I had many things going. I had a gospel singing group and we were recording. We were just traveling and singing. And I thought that was the thing that God wanted me to do for Him. And then at one of our concerts, I met a prophet who changed the direction that I was going in. And this particular prophet prophesied to me that God wanted to birth a church out of me in the city of Stockton, California. I just listened at first, but then I had moved from the Bay Area to Stockton. And I was traveling from Stockton to San Francisco to go to work, come back, pick up my family, and we go to the Bay Area, Richmond, in order to do ministry at my home church. And then we would travel all the way back to Stockton. Well, it got sort of hard to do, difficult to do. And so we started looking for a church home in the Stockton area. And then that's when God had the prophet to stop me and to let me know that God wanted to birth the church out of me.
Now, what I love about what you've done with Victory and Praise is the business side of it. You guys have all pulled together and you've created another agency that is available to sustain churches through hard times. Is that
Yeah.
an accurate understanding?
Yes, it is. It's called Visionaries Pursuing Excellence. It's bringing together pastors. The way God instructed me was to find out what vision that He gave them, and I am supposed to help them to fulfill that particular vision. I'm not supposed to give them a vision because then it would be my vision. So I was supposed to find out from each of the pastors what is the vision that God has given you concerning the ministry that He has called you to establish. And then I'm supposed to provide them with the tools and the resources in order to accomplish what God told them.
That's amazing. Now, what gave you the idea for the Visionaries Pursuing Excellence? How did that come to be? Did you have an MBA and you knew how to structure things through business, or was it something that God walked you through?
Well, I was at the end of my first master's. I had one class left, and God told me to leave. And He said, because you're going to go and study about me. So you go and sign up for a master's in theology and forget about the master's in computer science. And so I walked out of the class. Everybody thought I was crazy, but I knew I had heard the voice of God that told me to leave at that particular point. And they said, you only have 10 weeks left. You ought to stay here, get it, then go. I said, no, delayed obedience is not good when you're dealing with God. So
It's
I
still
had to,
disobedience, right?
yes, it is. It is still disobedience. So I had to leave and I immediately signed up at Fuller Theological Seminary to complete my master's of divinity at Fuller.
Wow. Now, what does it cost you to follow this plan that God had for you?
Oh, it cost me everything. It cost me everything. When I say everything, when we first established Victory and Praise, we had to invest every penny, including our 401ks. And when I say ours, it was both the husbands and the wives. We had to invest all of that. There was no off limits for whatever we had in our home. We'd have to take it and put it at the church. And I had to operate that I should not have a home that God blessed us with. We had marble floors. And I said, I can't have marble floors in my home, and I don't have marble floors at the house of God. So I would turn around and I'd take whatever money I would have and I would put in marble floors in the house of God. So we had to do that more than one. It wasn't just a one-time deal. It was we had to give up everything. There is no limit to what we would do for the cause of Christ. And as I heard you mention something at the beginning, it has provided us with what we classify as the biblical advantage. It is, don't think we're suffering, because we're not suffering at all, because God has a way of blessing or turning around. See, you can't outdo God. So whenever you surrender and you give all, and He places you in a situation where it's a test and you pass the test, He's going to come back big time. When I say big time, I mean He comes back big time. And
That
so,
he does.
yeah, that's how we operate. This is how we roll.
But gentlemen, before we move forward with that, there's something that I want to share with you because just like Bishop was sharing how he put in marble floors, our office is set up. And in our front room, the presence of the Holy Spirit is so enormous that it deters people from walking through our front door. It's amazing. And so when it came time for us to redo this office, there was no expense spared. If when I looked at it, I knew what I was building was a a monument to the Father, right? And
Mhm.
so oftentimes what will happen is you'll think that it has to be a church building or it doesn't have to be that. He will stay where there are people who serve him and people who love him and people who are
Mhm.
willing to follow him. And so the reason that you see so much of our, especially our more religious content coming out, or our Jesus content coming out of this office, is because this office has already been situated for that. And what Bishop is saying is the truth. My house has never, ever, ever
My
been
God.
more decorated than the place where God resides. Like I will, just like Bishop, I will live in something that is not as attractive to make sure that his house is attractive first. When you stand on that principle, because that is a principle, when you put God first, that's one of the
Hmm.
principles. When you put him first, he takes care of everything. I mean, if trouble walks through my front door, it's a matter of days, weeks, maybe even months, and it's completely resolved in ways that I never could have imagined. And I want to share this with you because it's really easy to sit back and listen to what Bishop is saying and to go, yeah, but he's a bishop. There is no yeah, but here. I'm not a bishop. I have not birthed many churches, and still I live the same experience that Bishop has. And Bishop can attest that I have the ability to stand through some of the nastiest, most ridiculous battles and to keep going, la, 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 la. It's a happy day. And so I share this with you because while it can feel daunting and overwhelming and just dismal, it's a feeling. And that's the emotion taking hold. That's not your logic and reason taking hold. And contrary to popular belief, Jesus coming through is not magic, it's principle based. It's very set in stone. If you do this, I'm going to do this. It's not negotiable. If you do this, and this is what he told you he's going to do it. You just have to learn to not be attached to how long it takes because sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 50 years. I mean, you don't know how long it's going to take. That's why the Bible tells us that this is a marathon and not a sprint. You got to be ready for the long haul always. And as Bishop explained, he's been doing this for 26 years. So I want you to understand that what he's saying is applicable to every single one of you who's listening right now. It's not just for people who carry the title of bishop or pastor or any of those things. It's any one of you. And it doesn't matter if you don't have a church of your own. Your church is your family. It's the wife that you have. It's the kids that you have been given charge over. That is your church. That is your ministry until something else happens. And so you've got to be willing to put as much effort and energy into them. And so I
That is,
wanted to support what Bishop was saying because it is accessible to everyone.
that is right. That is true. Yes.
So,
Hmm.
tell us more about your cost.
As far as pushing through, God did this thing. I call it training because God will train you. He doesn't, how
Yes,
can I?
he does. He puts
He
you
doesn't
through.
He doesn't go for the gusto at the very beginning. He starts small.
He
He
does.
starts small to test you to see if you can handle the small things before you end up in the big things. And the reason I'm saying that, and don't get it confused if I speak concerning money, but I'm just using the dollar amount as a tool for you to understand how God will do something. It's like when I started the ministry, it took everything we had. And then after the first year, it came up, we had to do something that was to the tune of $10,000. Well, that seemed like it was just too much for us. We didn't know what we were going to do after a year. But then he said to do this. So don't look at the dollar amount, look at whether or not we are completing what God is telling us to do.
Right.
And so within no time at all, we had completed the $10,000 task. So then when the next year came around, it was $50,000 that we had to do. And of course, it kind of made us almost want to step back. But then I said, we cannot look at the dollar amount. We have to listen to what God is telling us to do because money will try to tell you what you can and cannot do. Money should not have a voice in what God is saying. Only listening to what God is telling you to do should be the thing. So we pushed through and did what needed, and God brought in the resources behind to cover the 50,000. So then, of course, it moved to 100,000.
100,000.
And then the next time it went to, I think it was like, oh, it went right to the million right after that.
Right.
And then after that, it went to multi-million dollars. And so, and so with that, by the time I got there, I was not shaken too much
Right.
when it came up because I knew what God was doing. Would I trust him even though I needed multiple $1 million? And so then it was a test. And so I kept pushing, and God showed up because in the midst of all of those things, there were multiple roadblocks that we had to overcome in every last one of them. And even just recently here at the church, we got in here onto the campus, and basically we had some work that was being done, and the electrical room caught on fire, which blew out the whole campus. Unfortunately, someone lost their life in the midst of it. It was the day before we were supposed to move into a space that God had told us to move in. So then you were faced with, is this going to be the roadblock that's going to stop us from doing what God said to do? Or are we going to continue to move forward in what He said? Because this is pretty bad. Not only did the city of Stockton come out, we had the fire department come out, we had PG&E to come out. They pretty much shut down the whole campus. And I've come to realize it was going to be shut down for over a year. I couldn't allow that to happen.
Right.
And so I told our leadership, we're going to have to do something because God told us to move into this space. And now we don't have what we need to move into the space, but we're going to have to move into the space. And so I said, regardless to whether we have electricity, regardless to whether we have water, we are going in, and I'm going to stand on the stage and I'm going to preach. And if we're in the dark, we're going to be in the dark. At least I will have accomplished what God told us to do. And in the midst of it, someone mentioned, Well, I have a generator at my house. How about if I bring a generator? And somebody else said, I have one. So then we had all of these generators on the campus, and we were able to stay open. Our insurance company stepped up and said, we will get you a huge generator to power the whole campus until they would fix everything. And it happened to be about a year before everything got fixed.
You know, gentlemen, I want to share something because I have been around Bishop since 2007. And 2007 would have been the very beginning. And I knew we knew of each other at that point, but like we didn't have a friendship at that point. And what I want to share with you is not only what he just said about the generators coming in and the way that he walks by faith. One of the things that I have personally observed at Cost Bishop are relationships with people. Because one of the things that happens when you walk with the Father, when you truly not these pretend people. When you truly walk with the Father, people turn on you, lickety split. They lie about you. They will do everything they can to annihilate your name. And some days they just wake up and they just lose their mind and you're going, "What is this?" And you have no concept of what happens. And I have watched people say things about this man, talk about how he's done. Oh, he hurt him and he this. And understand this, Bishop has always been fiery. He is very straightforward. Like he doesn't hold any punches. He's not going to make you feel good. He's just going to tell you what it is. And there are some people who can't handle that. And when he does that, what then ends up happening is that now they got to talk about him. They have to do these things or they don't want to be around him. I mean, I have seen personally one of his costs be that people will walk away, that people will lie about him, that people will steal from him, and that people who tell him they love him won't stand by him. It's like David and Jonathan in Psalms. He's always happy to see me. He gives me these kisses, but then all of a sudden they know where we're at. He knew there was something going on. And these are some of the costs that Bishop has had to pay. And so the reason I bring that to you is because although his cost has been on a greater scale, part of learning to live by biblical principles means that it's going to cost you something. And there are going to be people who lie about you. And the reality is that as hard as this is because it's so opposite of way we really think, it is an honor when people start lying about you, when they start talking about you because it means you're on the right path.
That is correct. That is correct. Yeah. You, I'm. I don't want to say you have to because you don't have to do anything. um, it's just a figure of speech.
Right.
You have to realize that if you're going to be out in the vanguard, you're going to have to take the shots. You're going to have to take all of the lies, all of the plots, all of the schemes, and you can't let them distract you. It's more so, I know I have to continue to move in the things of what God is saying. I can't allow, even if someone dies on you, someone leaves, and it seems like I don't know if I can just overcome that. You can. That's the key thing to remember. And it's not that you are downgrading what happened to your life when you've lost a loved one or people who have betrayed you or people who have walked out. Because I notice most of the time when key people walk out, it's always right when a major event is
It's getting
getting ready to
to
happen.
happen. And they were not allowed to be there for that event. You got to go. Sorry.
And it leaves you almost saying, we might have to just cancel this event. But then you have to realize who is the one who is the provider for the event. The Lord is the one that is moving ministry, and He is more concerned about people who will come to know Him and the people who are currently following Him than He is the leader. It's almost like when what prophet was that? The wife died, and God told him, "You can't even cry, though you can't even mourn. You have to keep going no matter what." And so you feel all the punches, you feel the stabs, you feel all the betrayal, you feel all of the loneliness, you feel it all, but you know you have this call from God on your life that is much higher, more important than all of what's going on around you. I guess
And
that's the best way I can describe it.
the higher your call, the bigger
Yes,
the things you're going
yes.
to
Say it
accomplish and
again.
achieve.
Yeah, you got to
The
say it
higher your
again.
call, the higher your call, the more you're going to accomplish. Oh, don't be surprised when you go through a season and everything you do feels like failure. It never seems to work out. You start moving, things start looking good, and then they fizzle. And you're like, I don't get it. That's the moment when you gotta stand.
And that's the moment, if I can say, I learn more from failure than I do from success.
And you
I
know
learn.
what, Bishop? It's actually the perception of failure. Because within what appears to be failure, there's
Mhm.
always something that's successful. Always. So
Something to be learned. Yeah.
definitely. But let's even share when the property company went through and all that money was confiscated from us, right?
Uh-huh.
We still own all the properties. We still have them. Do you understand what I'm saying? So while
Uh-huh.
what
Hmm.
happened to us was a failure, God didn't take away those properties. So none of the plans have to end. Now they just have to pivot and they have to shift. So that's why I say it's really the perception of failure, because the lessons that you learn give you the opportunity to create a greater level of success.
Yes. So it's not an excuse because you have problems and you encounter them to give up and to walk away. That's not an option. That's not an option. And I just described whenever something happens, I have to sit back and say, now, what lesson will I learn out of this? What is God trying to teach me in this situation that I am in? Just like recently, you know about it when we went to the bank and found out there was $0 in the zero.
No, I didn't hear about that.
Oh, you did zero. When I say zero, it was zero.
Yeah, I understand that. I've been in that spot before.
And
Whoo!
it
Yeah,
shocked us all. But then we could not just stay there, and we
right.
couldn't just throw in the towel. We just couldn't. We had to stop and say, we're here. And the company, the organization that helped us to establish it, that was the same company that was coming after us that brought light to the situation that we were in.
Mm.
And so, but God has brought us out because we did not falter. We did not give up. It was definitely looking and saying, what are we going to do? If you're going to be a leader, you have to get used to people saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We've never been at zero. And we're at $0 at this point. And we have bills that equate to $40,000 a month.
Some
What
people's
are
annual salary. Yeah.
what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this? And then you, as a leader, because the option is not to walk away and just say, forget it, because that's what the IRS told us to do. Oh, it's time for you to just shut down. It's time for you to.
The same people who helped you start the church turn around and say, it's time to end it.
It's time for it's time for you to let it go. And I'm sitting there saying, no, not because of this, just because we're facing this. No, I had to go and ask God, what should I do in this situation? How should I handle this? And when it came down to it, that the bank told us we had to get a certain amount of thousands of dollars to the bank within 2 hours, then that's when God started moving. He started moving. And we met that goal, which was a shock to everyone. And
Yeah.
then what you can't do is you can't start running after the people that you know is responsible for you being in the condition that you're in, whether they took it, whether they misused it. You cannot run after them. You go and you run to ask God, what do I do in order to recover? This is your house. Tell me what needs to be done in order to keep your house going. I hope this helps someone, that it doesn't matter how big it is. It's more so learning when it is small. Because if you give up, if you throw in the towel too soon, you will not get to know God on the next level. So you have to pass every one of the tests.
Now, how many times during these challenges did you feel like you couldn't breathe?
Every last one of them. I felt like I
Okay.
was suffocating. I felt
Yep.
like I was suffocating. And then I always would ask myself, is this the one that is going to take us out?
Yep.
Is this the one that's going to bring an end to what God has established? Is this it? Because
And
if
it
it is, then that's what it has to be. But until God says it's over, it's not over. It's not over.
and it never seems to be, right? Like you still
That's
keep
right.
standing, you still keep going.
Keep going.
Mhm.
Yep. And we're
And
still going.
and I want you guys to understand that as you listen to this, there aren't very many of us out here who really walk with the Father, who cannot attest to this same type of story. The details are different for each and every one of us who live through it, but the
Mhm.
principle is still the same. And for some people, they'll sit back and look at God and say, well, you're just being mean to us. No, actually, I want you to understand something. The world is mean. And that's what we have to deal with. We are in the world, but we are not of the world. And
That
in
is right.
being in the world, we have to deal with people who are in the world.
That's
And
right.
they have the power and ability to make decisions. And sometimes the decisions that they make cause us harm.
And I want to explain. Can I explain? Whenever
Sure.
I smile and whenever I sort of laugh, it's sort of a, I'm not making fun. I'm not minimizing anything.
No.
It's more of a nervous response that I have in regards to these things that come to block, come to try to stop, try to hinder, try
Mhm.
to cause a separation, and all of these different things. It's, I just have to smile every time, because it's almost like I said, I'll look and say, I knew you were coming, devil. I just didn't know which way you were coming. And so you coming this, you're coming this way this time. Okay. All right. Let's do this thing. Let's see how this is going to play out.
Now, in a practical sense, how has all of this worked on your marriage? Are you married to the same woman that you've always been? Have you been divorced and remarried? What's your
No.
status there?
We've been married for 45 years. In September, it'll be 46 years. Yeah,
Wow.
no, it's been just the one. And we're still best friends. We still have a good time. We enjoy one another.
Now, how did you guys manage to maintain that through all the adversity? I mean, marriages are ending left and right now. So, how is it that you guys managed to overcome all the things that kept coming against you?
Whatever problem I face, it's her problem too. She's facing it too. And whatever situation or problems that she face, it's my problem too. We're facing it together. It's never ever, oh, that's yours, you handle it all by yourself. So it's almost like, let's see how God is going to move in this situation. And so we are working to almost sort of offset or support each other in whatever problem we face. And because she was there when we had to sacrifice everything in the beginning, in the middle, as we go along the way, because even with this last situation where it was $0, it was like, what do we have? We will have to just we have to sell it in order to keep this ministry going, because it's important for us. So it's not like, oh, that's yours, you just handle it on your own. So
Right.
we work together with it.
Now we have an episode coming up pretty soon, and I want to ask you about this. And I pray that I already know the answer to this, and so that this is not very personal. But if it is too personal, let me know, and we will just remove it or what have you from the interview. But before the two of you, did the two of you refrain from knowing each other until after you were married?
Yes.
And it's funny because that's one of the things we've been preaching on, or not preaching, talking about lately, is the importance of why God told us to wait, because it's the thing that makes you friends. You understand? Like, you can't get
Hmm.
to it's a because sex causes a bond, because of the way it affects men and the way that it affects women and the differences in that, you start focusing on the wrong things instead of getting to know more about the person. You're driven by something else completely. And so we've been talking a lot about that. Get to know the person. If you really want a marriage that's going to last, know who they are as a person.
Hmm. Yes. Well, some people might look at us and say we were so young, because she was 17 and I was 19 when we got married. And so, pretty much prior to that, we were in high school. Huh?
Honestly, I don't really think that that's too young. Here's the thing. You guys now have known each other.
Hmm.
Like, you've been together longer than you've ever been separated. Do you even
That
know
is true.
life without Lady Trina?
No, no. But then you have also, what comes into play as you grow, you
Mhm.
change. And
Yeah,
so you have to come to know your spouse as a new person as you go along.
yeah.
They never ever just stay the same. So, but the problem comes in is when you think that they are the same person, that she's the same individual that she was at 17. And now that she's what, 63, they're not the same individual. We
Right.
have grown. And so it's on me to rediscover her with every change or every phase that she goes through. And it's the same thing with me. It's on her to rediscover who I am as we go through life. I think God did that on purpose so that you have to keep checking and seeing, who is this new person that I'm dealing with right now.
And it's always should be exciting and fun to peel
It
back the
is.
layers
If
of
you
that
make it,
onion. Yeah.
if you make it fun, if you make it exciting, it will be.
And see, that's what I love about talking to Bishop. That's what I was telling you guys earlier. He's going to keep it straight. If you aren't having fun getting to know your wife, you might want to
Right.
ask yourself how you got there to begin with. What
That is
was it
true.
that you truly fell in love with? Because if you really were in love with her, then getting to know her should be exciting at every stage and at every level.
That is right.
So, well, Bishop Rufus, I want to thank you so much for taking
Oh,
time out of your day
you're, you're
to
welcome.
join us. Did you have any last minute thoughts that you wanted to share, or
No,
anything that you'd like to encourage our men with?
I it's more so God uses people who are already doing things. Um, so if you're sitting and not doing anything, he seems to overlook people who are just sitting idle. you need to just start doing something, and then God just might interrupt what you're doing. And if He interrupts it, then you have to be willing to shift according to the way that He desires for you to go.
A lot of people don't understand what that means, that you have to be doing something, and that if
Mhm.
you're sitting idle, God doesn't come because, there's that saying, God helps those who help themselves, but that's
Mhm.
not really biblical.
No,
So
it's
when you say that you can't be sitting idle, what does that mean exactly?
it means God has placed in you passion for something. You love to do something. And there's a reason why He has placed that passion in you. And so you should be operating in that passion until He redirects you. Like, I loved music. I was playing music. He taught me how to play the keyboard. He taught me how to write songs and whatnot. And I was teaching people how to sing and whatnot. And I opened a music store in the city of San Pablo. I was doing things according to my passion. And then He came in and said, okay, stop doing that. Go this way. And you have to be willing to pivot and not be frustrated. I spent all this money. I spent all this time doing this. I spent all this time.
Bishop knows our big boss. His name is Todd. And Bishop knows him. And boy, that was always his biggest pet peeve. When it was time to pivot, he was like, why can't you just stick to one topic? Why can't you? I'm like, wow. Okay. I'll let you know how that goes for me. Hello, maker of the universe. Todd said I can't move. So no. I'm like, that doesn't work.
But then people see the results.
True.
And it's not a result to make you feel like you have accomplished anything, because I can only do what Christ allows me to do. And so, therefore, I can't boast in any of the things.
Right.
It's all because of what He is just using me as an instrument. And He wants to use you as an instrument. The Word of God says He's going up and down the earth, searching for someone to show Himself strong in. And
Yeah.
so He's looking for you. He's just looking for somebody that is willing to surrender and say, okay, if He tells me to go this way, I'm going to go this way. If He tells me to sit down, I'm going to sit down. I'm not going to find myself standing up. And there are
Right.
going to be people that's going to stand in the way to tell you that you don't have to sit down. But
Yeah.
you have to override and say, God told me to sit down. I'm going
Right.
to sit down.
Exactly.
Okay. That's all I have to say.
Well, Bishop, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so
Uh,
excited to have had this chance to talk to you. It's truly been a pleasure.
yeah, it's been a pleasure. God bless you.
And you.